Welcome to Biden Time. I am Christian Bladt, joined as always by Tamra Brown.
Hola.
And of course, Scott Moore. There's a lot to talk about every time we do this show, regardless of the name of the show. But I wanted to start off, Scott, with the voting rights bill that did not pass.
I thought we were going to start off with something important like Britney's conservatorship.
No, the whole back 45 minutes of the show is about Britney.
Okay, just papers flying over here. My notes and my preparation all out the window.
We're gonna go word by word through Toxic. So just be ready. Have the lyrics out. The voted 50-50 down the middle, but this is in a way where, Vice President Harris isn't going to step in and do any kind of tiebreaker because they needed 60 to actually talk about it. Now there's rumblings that Democrats are they're willing to at least consider photo IDs because that's something that was important to Joe Manchin. And if you don't have your 50 Democrats, you really can't get anything done. Scott, I'm never surprised. I am completely unsurprised by this turn of events. What do you think about this end result, and where does President Biden go from here in terms of voting legislation? And remember, Scott, your microphone is on mute. I can see the little checked off microphone. Yeah.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. I was going to say that, again, not a surprise. We expected this to happen. And what I think will be fascinating to see is what would happen if the roles were reversed and it was Republicans that had 50+1. Would they be keeping the filibuster? And if Mitch McConnell was still there? And that's things that I think about in my nerd political dreams, is what would happen if the roles were reversed, because I have a feeling that Mitch McConnell would find a way to carve out, which we've talked about before, carving out voting rights and other things as an exception for the filibuster rule, which we've seen for other things already with judicial nominees, for instance. Democrats have their work cut out for them. They may have to do some individual bills now going forward. They may have to do work within the framework of reconciliation, which means all you need is a simple majority when it comes to some budget appropriations, which also is going to be difficult. But it's not a surprise. I mean, you have a razor thin majority here, and you have two Democrats that come from very conservative states, and so there are definitely challenges to make sure everyone's sort of on board here. But I think that the Democrats are going to find a way to make it work. They go on recess after this week for the 4th of July holiday. So they probably will not be picking this back up until mid-July when they come back around July 12th. So there will be a little bit of time there to sort of let things cool off a bit and figure out what the next steps are. But Democrats are not going to let this go away. This is way too important to allow this to go away. They're just going to have to come up with more creative processes to make it work. If it's standalone bills, if it's pared down a bit, but the core things are going to continue to happen because, again, this is vitally important for the future of the country. So we'll see from when they come back after the recess on what direction they want to go in. But to see Joe Manchin actually support it yesterday, to me, was a positive sign that he is going to be supportive in helping move the goal lines forward with the Democrats and what they want to do at the end result. So you had a solid 50 Democrats voting for this to take it out. So that is a positive sign as well. If he had said no, then you could see there could be more of a collapse. But for him to say yes means that there's definitely some movement, and this is just the beginning of this process.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts, Tamra? Did you hold out any hope that this is something that could be passed, or are you hardened and bitter like Scott and I at this point in your life?
Well, a little of both. I do think that as long as the Republicans are still promoting Trump's delusion that the election was somehow stolen from him. As long as they are still going to go all in on that, I do believe that Democrats should not work to compromise. They should use whatever the slim majority that they can to. I'm not sure if reconciliation, Scott probably knows, would work in this circumstance. What circumstances they're able to use that, but whatever means to throw their weight around, I think is warranted, considering what the delusion that the Republicans have been laboring under that has hindered that is the reason for their voting rights reform. They're claiming to keep some sort of fraud that there's no evidence actually happened.
Yeah, no, I think that's really where we find ourselves here. But I'm sure that everybody was ready for here's what happens next. And they obviously, regardless of which party you are a member of, nothing transcends the idea of getting some more incredibly valuable time off from the job that you barely put any time into. Somebody that I saw this on Twitter. His name is Judd. It's not Legume, but it's Legum. He posted, Senate Republicans unanimously vote to establish Juneteenth as a holiday. Then a couple days later, unanimously vote to block legislation to protect voting rights. Any questions? Yeah, I mean, I think that a federal holiday that there's no gain to not voting for. You will only be criticized for voting against it, except by a fringe majority. But this is real, actual changes that will upset people and won't benefit them. So I can absolutely see the difference, but I thought it was said much more succinctly by Mr. Legum, who I still want to call Mr. Legume because I think it's funny. I would actually like to legally change my name to Legume. Another big story that our friend Storage Yard Resident was hoping we'd get to, and I told him it is our next topic because it's the all-request lunch hour here on Biden Time. And we... Vice President Harris is going to the border 91 days after she was appointed the czar of the border, and I believe a mere 5 days before former President Trump is set to go to the border. I can't imagine what Trump is going to do there, and I'm sure it's the Texas part of the border, because that's the part where they want him. Yeah, they probably want him in Arizona too. But in any case, what do you think, Tamara? We've talked about this, the criticism against her explanation that other people have gone to the border. Yes, but you haven't. Yeah, but other people have. And now she's going to be one of the people that went. Do you think that the administration feels that there's some pressure in having the former president go before her? So they needed to kind of swoop in, because you don't need that soundbite of him. The vice president doesn't want to be here, but I'm here. I care about you. What do you think about Kamala Harris taking this trip south of the border?
I don't know if the decision for her to take the trip to the border is in response to Trump going there. I don't know if that has any bearing on their strategy. I think it's time for her to go. I don't think, for whatever reason, that she hasn't visited the border as yet. Who knows? I mean, who knows what the reason for that is? She's been busy, I guess, if I'm going to be generous. But I do think, like we talked about last time, for some reason she's being scrutinized for the explanation for not going to the border, more so than anybody else would have been, I think. And so Trump is sort of grasping at straws at this point. He's so far out of the limelight now. His deleted his blog because nobody was reading it, because he's just becoming more and more obsolete. So the fact that he's going to the border seems sort of just like Okay, yeah, do what you got to do, buddy. You know, nobody
By
really
the way,
cares.
I for one loved that blog, and we shared it
I'm
here
sure you did.
on the show when it premiered. I don't think he gave it time. I think that but maybe he's partnering with the My Pillow guy on Frank, the platform that he's continuing to promote and develop. Yeah, I think it is certainly. By the way, I think that something that I will take completely out of context, a combination of words that Tamra just used. I think that Storage Yard resident and some others would agree with. You said regarding VP Harris, it's time for her to go. And I'm pretty sure that he would agree with that. Now, of course, you meant go take a trip to the border, but, I'm just taking it entirely out of context. I'm just trying to bring people together on this show. I'm a uniter, not a divider. Scott, VP Harris taking this trip. Do you think there's 0% consideration of the optics, a very important word in politics, the optics that former President Trump might head down there before her?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's all about the optics. That's the whole point why, you go to the border anyways, is just for the photo op.
I mean, I'll just interrupt for a second. It's not like she's going to help finish the wall. Like, she doesn't actually need to be. There's nothing for her to do there other than, well, now I've seen it. You could FaceTime her from the wall and show her everything.
I mean, it's just it's ridiculous. And I said the same thing when Republicans would do it all the time, and when Trump would do it, it's silly, and it is all about the optics. And so the administration is probably feeling like, okay, yes, she was appointed to this. She went down to the triangle down in Central America already and visited with the leaders, and they had their initial conversations. But now seeing him try to go out and have some. He wants to be relevant again, as Tamra said. Trump is so desperate for anything. So giving him anything to take on and saying, look, I went and visited again first. And I do agree with you, Christian. I believe it'll probably be Texas, because I know Governor Abbott wanted to pool some of the border states like Arizona's National Guard and help pay to secure the border, again, for another political stunt. But the funny thing is really Texas is the only one, and that was a close state that even went for Trump anyways on the border. So I always find it ironic when, and this happened in the past too, after September 11th, when they were talking about, all the states and how they were going to support Republicans for national defense, and all the states that were affected by 9/11 all voted for the Democrat. And that's the same thing here. We look at the border, and now you have California, Arizona, and New Mexico that all went for the Democratic president, and Texas was pretty close, and that was also thanks to some of their already existing voter suppression laws. But neither here nor there. That's part of their stunt, and they love to play up the optics and the PR. So I do believe that the administration is trying to set the tone and say, okay, we'll send her down there for the optics if we have to play this game. But it's embarrassing, and neither party should be doing that, because it takes away from the seriousness of the actual issues that are going on down there. And again, a lot of the issues that we as a country have helped create over the past 35, 40 plus years. So that's what we should be focusing on, not the PR optics. But as long as we have social media and short attention spans, that's what we're going to see going forward, because politics is becoming more entertainment than actual real work now.
As long as we have great platforms like TikTok, where everyone should follow the account Hey Tamra. Obviously, I mean, that's really why we're here, is to get out the important messages. When I asked our friend Storage Yard resident what he would like us to talk about today, this was I'll put on the screen what he said: the reinstatement of President Trump. And to which I said, you know what, we'll spend a couple minutes on it, but even he knows that he won't be reinstated. And Storage Yard pointed out that he was on Real America's Voice, that network, talking about reinstatement on Monday. You want to know you want to know the pedigree of Real America's Voice. I turned down a regular Thursday spot on that network. They weren't going to pay me. Literally, I could have done a show for them, and I was just like, "Wait, what's the plus here?" Nothing. Okay, great. So I did not do that. So it's I'm sure Sean Hannity will always take his call, but will Sean Hannity always put him on his show?
Just
That's
for
the question.
clarity, does storage yard resident mean the August, Trump taking back the office? Is that what he's referring to?
Well, there's a couple of those things. And this is the main reason why I want to bring this up is, yes, storage yard resident, you're 100% right. He did mention it in the capacity of his interview, but it is one of his talking points. It is a tremendous fundraising tool for the Trump elite, as it were, the Trump mafia, if you will. They know that this idea is like, yeah, you need to help us get him back into the White House, even though there's absolutely nothing. There's no law in place anywhere that would allow for that. There's no scenario where that happens. Donald Trump is not in the order of succession for the White House. Now, you can argue whether people would vote for him in 2024, and then he would then get that opportunity. But at this moment, there's nothing in place for him. And even if he hopes it's true, he has enough people that tell, Jared Kushner knows that it's not happening, the people that he actually listens to. Now, the reason why I'm bringing it up is that it keeps coming up as there's this August date. There was the March date, which was the old inauguration day, and everybody thought it was that. And now the August date is just August because he told somebody somewhere, I was like, well, I'm gonna be back by August. And if he does believe that, then that helps reinforce what I think is one of the most kind headlines I've seen about the former president in a while. This was a week ago from the Daily Mail, describing former President Trump as pale, absolutely pale, but gaunt. And I'm like, that's a British publication. Does gaunt mean something different in the UK? Because and of course, now that I'm trying to show the pictures, they're not coming out. But
maybe he just didn't have he didn't have the orange makeup as much.
yeah, that might be what it was.
Also, coming from a British publication, that's the pot calling the kettle pale.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah, that would be like criticizing his dental work. He definitely. That's allegedly the very powerful phrase that did in Margaret Thatcher was just the comment, doesn't she look tired? And this is very much saying like, oh boy, he looks exhausted. He does look tired. I don't know what he's tired from, but so he's out there making the rounds. And I always like to circle back to Q because God damn it, Q, you've been kind of except for the part where you tried to overthrow the government. You take out that one day, Q's fucking hysterical. I mean, the fact that they're starting to believe that this might not happen. And former President Trump announced a tour in December with Bill O'Reilly. I don't think they've officially announced, but I do believe I've seen the T-shirts, and it's definitely the Grab Them by the Pussy tour. So former President Trump and Bill O'Reilly will be out there making the rounds. So Q is just like, well, how can that be? He's supposed to have been president again by 4 months. I'm really thinking this isn't going to happen. And then you have everybody else is like, no, it's just they're all over the course of a week. He could still be president. And it's just like, come on. I think that Q needs to see the movie because I don't think they would read the book. He's just not that into you because Donald Trump is not that into you, but he will definitely be happy for you to take some money. And even though I don't believe that he would be reelected president in 3 years' time, I do understand it's a possibility. But the other part, they'll just be reinstated president. You'd be just as likely to reinstate George H.W. Bush as president. But he's
I would say Jimmy Carter.
Well, yeah, I know Jimmy Carter is who I was thinking, but I'm like George H.W. Bush has passed, and he's just as likely to be reinstated.
True, that's very true. The odds are you could say the same. That is so true.
But I don't know. And look, there's always been a degree, and I'm talking long before you ran for president. There's always a P.T. Barnum degree of hucksterism, and that suits his brand right now. Mm-hmm. Tamra, do you think that Donald Trump believes that he's really going to be reinstated as president in August? Or is this just a convenient way to grab onto that limelight that you were talking about a few minutes ago?
Oh boy, that's a question asking me to delve
Getting
into the
into his head.
psyche of Trump. He just, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. Has he ever believed anything that he's said? Does he truly believe that, you know, Clorox could cure COVID? I mean, who knows how the extent of his personal belief to the things that he says. Maybe it's that, he is so used to, fake it till you make it, that he says something before believing it, but then once it's out of his mouth, then he sort of convinces himself that it's true. I think, whether he believes it or not, it's just a matter of trying to stay relevant. Like I said before, like he's just doing anything that he can to, not be falling into obscurity. But and the fact that he still has this sliver of marketability that he still has, despite anybody else other than Donald Trump, we'd barely remember their name right now. But even as far as he's drifted into obscurity, he's hanging in there better than anybody else would have. So yeah, I mean at this point, I think he's just doing whatever he can to stay somewhat relevant. And if insisting that he's going to be reinstated in August without citing any like path or way that would actually happen, not that his followers need any sort of documentation or sources cited or any sort of logical path, it's just keeping his name on the tongues of people that conservative media, just keeping his name out there in any way that they can.
Yeah, no, I think that's almost entirely what this is. And Scott, he was again critical of former Vice President Pence for not being brave enough to overthrow the election. Still no conversation about the people who were looking for him so that they could hang him from a noose. But we'll just move past that for right now. That's not part of the conversation. And he was also critical of two of the Supreme Court justices that he appointed. Oddly enough, the ones that there were the biggest uproar over, Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. And I'm not saying that it wasn't right to have the uproar, but Neil Gorsuch was the one that everybody's like, yeah, what are we going to do? These other two, though, were the ones that was like, whoa, this is a bad idea. And those are the ones he's disappointed in. We'll talk about that in a bigger sense, but he was very critical of them for upholding Obamacare, which I think that Obamacare will be voted on and litigated long after Malia has passed, and I'm assuming she will live to a very ripe old age. There will be no one left in the Obama family, and they'll still be voting on Obamacare and having no changes made to it. What do you think, Scott? Sort of all of these things that seem important to the former vice president, but the reason why he's saying them is that there's some percentage of Americans that still feel like these things are important. They're disappointed with his Supreme Court nominees. They think he's going to be reinstated in August. By the way, is it August 1st? Is it August 15th? You just don't know when. I want to plan my vacations around it.
Me too.
So
and
what do you think?
Well, first of all, let the record state that I'm saying here on June 23rd, 2021, Donald Trump will never, ever, ever be president again, regardless if he decides to run again in 2024, which he will never be president. He will not win. He is a certified loser. He will not, there's just no world in which he comes back and wins. He won by such a fluke in 2016. And if he even remotely believes that he's going to be reinstated, then that should also be added to the long list of disqualifications for him, because he's clearly mentally unstable, because there is no world in which he would ever be reinstated in a random time period in August for any stretch, any reason at all. So, and then if people are donating and he's getting fundraising, I do not feel sorry for those people, because they also need help, because if they're giving him money in the thought that he is somehow going to be reinstated in August, they too should seek probably some mental health. And thankfully for Obamacare, they can. So Obamacare also is never, ever, ever going away either. So Republicans can keep the charade up as long as possible to attract some kind of voters, but it's here to stay. And the longer that it's here, the harder it is to overturn. It's the same thing that happened with Social Security in the 30s. It's the same thing that happened with Medicare in the mid 60s. It's not going away. So Republicans can, play the charade all they want, but it's here permanently to stay. So those are my two things. Obamacare is here to stay. Donald Trump will never, ever be president again. So if people want to donate, good on them, but I'm glad they have money to waste. They could also just flush it down the toilet if they wanted to, give money away, because there's no point to be able to support the narcissist. But to Tamara's point, I cannot imagine. But then again, you're like Tamara, like you're trying to get into the head of kind of an odd person. So who knows what he really believes deep down inside? And I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit hole. But if he does, he should be nowhere near anything that revolves nuclear weapons ever again. But thankfully, he won't. So we can happily move on from there. We can all rest a little easier knowing he'll never be back.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely the case, and it's interesting, just the and storage yard resident asking the question, what if it actually happens? It's just it can't happen. It would be like me saying that I'm going to be instated president.
Yeah,
there's even if this farce of an Arizona recount, which literally no one takes seriously, except for people who are spending money on it, and
not even Republicans anymore, and a lot of Republicans are backing away there in Arizona now. Like, this is even too much for us.
Yeah. Even if that were to find, like, oh my God, look at all these votes that got changed. There's nothing you can do about it. They were already certified. And do you think any other state wants to then weigh in? Like, then Georgia's like, standing up for the integrity of the elections really made my life hell. That guy, Brad Rafflesberger, you think he's going to like, all right, well, I guess now we just have to throw it out because look what Arizona did. Like, literally none of the things that would happen would actually then result in that. There is no way that it happens. Storage yard resident, I would expect you to be our next president before Donald J. Trump would be back in there. And I know you well enough. I'm like, I have a pretty good 100%. Feel for who storage yard resident is. I'd question storage yard resident making Alex Jones his press secretary, but if storage yard resident is the president, that's up to him. He can do whatever he wants. Anyway, so I did want to shift it over to the Supreme Court. There was this ruling on Obamacare, holding up Obamacare again. And the dissent was Alito and Gorsuch, I believe. Those were the only two that voted against it. Even Clarence Thomas, ultimately, there was conversation about like, well, we could hear it, we could listen to it, but then ultimately it was like, yeah, but that's, there's nothing to it. So do you think that, and we'll talk about it we'll spend a minute on a couple of the other rulings that I think are interesting, but Tamra, this has to be the last we ever hear of anybody challenging Obamacare, right? Everybody's just going to have to take it and be glad that they can get health care, that they or their neighbors can just go online and get affordable health care if they need it, right? I mean, it's called the Affordable Care Act. So everybody's happy with affordable care at this point. Is that what I should take away from this, Tamra?
As much as we're confident that Trump is going to be president in August, that is equally equally assured that this will never be challenged again. I have to wonder that, when Amy Coney Barrett especially was being vetted and her what do you call it, the test trial for her affirmation into the Supreme Court, she has the least experience. Kavanaugh has the second least experience of a legal career of any of the Supreme Court. So that makes me wonder if, at the time that seemed so dangerous, but maybe that means that they are the most persuadable. So I don't know. I just have to wonder, like, if that's the reason that they did not dissent on these. And there's been a couple. There's been previous rulings that Kavanaugh went in the direction that you would not expect him to. So that's what my thought is.
Yeah, no, I think that look, I do believe that there's a lot made about the Supreme Court justices when they're being confirmed, because you look for the things in the record, or like, well, this is the worst case scenario of things they would vote for. What you would hope is, regardless of anybody's personal ideology, they would follow their interpretation of the law, which generally seems to be happening, and people aren't necessarily happy with nobody's happy with all of these rulings, but I think that that was one that probably got the most headlines. And Scott, I do want to ask you about that, but I'm gonna loop in another one that the Supreme Court ruled in favor of this high school cheerleader who took to social media with sentiment that I think it's really hard to disagree. Is she posted "fuck cheer," and anybody that's ever gone to high school, I think it's kind of an easy thing to believe in. I mean, what are they so happy about anyway? Is the school really that great? Do they really want to, like, who wants to be on the bottom of the human pyramid? Being at the top is fun for sure, but do you want to hold up everybody else? So. And in that ruling, Justice Breyer said that that students do not shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression, even at the schoolhouse gate, which is sort of old terminology, the schoolhouse gate. But these are old people. What do you think? Sort of, just a little bit about that one. It seems like free speech is something that I think people are always concerned, rightly so, being under attack. They're upholding that, but they're also upholding Obamacare. What do you think that these rulings say about the Supreme Court?
I mean, look, it's still a conservative bent, so there's no reason that anyone should think that suddenly these new justices have turned a corner. Like we talked about, I mean, that was a pretty cut and dry case, in my opinion, when it came to the cheerleading thing, because, yeah, I mean, it is a First Amendment right. And I thought it was interesting because I was in Vegas last week, and I was in a couple of casinos, and a couple times my friend would just shout the F word, and when something bad, like a bad hand or something, and they had said like, oh, you need to like keep it down or what. I'm like, wait, we're in Vegas. Like, since when?
You weren't at Disney World. You were in Vegas.
Yeah.
You were at Disney World for grown-ups. Yeah.
So I found it kind of interesting that and so it made me think about that with this particular case. I mean, clearly you're in a private, entity technically when you're in this casino and everything, but I thought, really? Like, since when did Vegas become like with it just saying, yep, or like, what? This was so bizarre. So it made me really think about it with this case, but I do believe that was very cut and dry. I don't think we're seeing any kind of change or turn. I think the biggest one that, if you wanted to really look at, is John Roberts, who has been sort of that moderating force. And for him, the bigger picture, and we saw it during the Trump years, that he was even getting frustrated with this ultra politicalization of the Supreme Court justices, which it shouldn't ever be. And that's why he even had that comment back then, like, there aren't Obama judges or Trump judges and that kind of thing. And we've gotten so carried away with politicizing these judges. And like you said, Christian, at the end of the day, they are dealing with how they are interpreting the law, and sometimes it will be different, and this is not a political position, and it will be different than how somebody in Congress would opt to vote, and is going back out to the voters and all that stuff. They don't have to ever deal with that, so they can go down and really go with how is the law need to be applied. And it goes back to Obamacare, and again, there's a great authority with the separation of powers to allow Congress to make these laws, and the point is, Congress was able to put this through back in 2010 with, and that clearly stands. And they kind of had a narrower focus on this Obamacare, just saying that these states didn't have any reason to, have any standing, because it's true. There is no penalty now, thanks to Republicans, for not paying that tax. So there is no standing for you because you're not being hurt or harmed by that. So, they still applied it to a narrow focus. And that's why I still think you're not looking at these justices as being suddenly liberal or progressive. They're just applying a very narrow case to the law, which they are correct. And that's why I was not concerned that it would be overturned, because there was just no standing and there was no reason to overturn it. And I think the same thing with the cheer thing. It's completely within the first right amendment for somebody to be able to say that. So there's nothing major here that changes the thoughts that they're not a conservative leaning court. And I think that we're just going to see that as we move forward. And that's been the case since the beginning of time with this, that we're not, we're not seeing a progressive versus a conservative as far as a politicization of the justices. They're just applying the law as their backgrounds would state. And a lot of this stuff is going to be upheld. And that's why I said Obamacare is not going anywhere.
And simply applying the law, it makes you wonder how it got as far as the Supreme Court, like especially the cheerleader swearing case. Like, how did that even make it to the Supreme Court?
Yeah, no, that's a great point about
that's a bigger issue to me, that kind of, when things wind their way up to the Supreme Court. And also the thing that's always frustrating to me too is how one judge will say one thing and then the next judge overturns. It's like that back and forth before it gets to the Supreme Court is just maddening. I mean, we have that right now with California with the assault weapons ban. That was oh nope, that's unconstitutional, and then the other judge overrode it and said nope, that it can stay in place. It's that back and forth that you see all the time that to me is maddening, because you do need some consistency and constant, like, let's take it to the next one and see what they say, and then that court will overturn what the previous court said. And I'm like, okay, we need some kind of, so that's where it ends up going to the Supreme Court, because technically they're the arbiter of the final say on these sort of issues. So you can see that it's wound its way through the years up there, because it's probably gone back and forth. I haven't looked at its history, but I'm sure one court said, oh no, she can't do that in, public school property or whatever. And another court said, absolutely, she can. And, so it's just that back and forth. And so the Supreme Court is supposed to be that final say across the land of, like, okay, we say yes or we say no to this, and that's it. So that's why a lot of them are going there, because of these same crazy back and forth. Case in point, the assault weapons ban right now in California is a very good example.
Yeah, and look, I think we all have a right to say what we want about cheerleading. That's really where it comes back around. And there were some interesting other rulings, that seem to be favoring the student athletes against the NCAA. And I don't know. I think that they seem to be fairly straightforward rulings. But we'll see if they end up with any of the truly hot button issues. I'm sure that there is no one on that panel that is looking to, oh boy, we really hope we get an appeal of Roe versus Wade on our desk sometime before the summer. Can we please dive into that? We can't wait. So we'll see. But hey, it's somebody in Washington that seems to be working consistently, so we'll give them credit for that. You were talking about the assault weapons ban, and President Biden has he commented, I believe, yesterday about there's a lot of crime out there, and the president wants to crack down on firearms. He's blaming the guns for crime waves. But he's also going to let states and cities use $350 billion in COVID relief to hire more police after defund the police movements gutted some of our nation's police forces. I not quite sure. If people wanted to defund the police, I don't know if the federal government then spending money on it is in the interest of the people who defunded it in the first place. Far be it from me to say that defunding the police was perhaps enacted too hastily in some cities instead of being considered and put into place. What do you think, Tamra, about President Biden saying that guns are the big problem with the crime? I mean, just I hear a lot about New York because I'm from there, and just the levels of crime and just sort of this like weeks long party that's happening in Washington Square Park that they just can't break up. And you're like, really? You can't go in there and hey, we're not partying here today. You guys need to go home. I don't know. The NYPD of my youth would have probably cracked a couple of skulls and people would have gone home. But maybe that's not what we have now. So what do you think, Tamra? Are guns the problem or just a problem in terms of the crime?
That's a complicated issue too. I mean, are they the problem? No, I would say, systematic racism and poverty is probably the problem when it comes to crime. When it comes to defunding the police, the federal Democrats, there's not a Democratic senator that has stood behind defunding the police. Defunding the police has mostly happened at the local level, and the Democratic Party has never officially supported defunding the police. They have supported restructuring other things that lead to corruption within police, and guns being one of the issues, and a lot of other factors, more so than standing behind defunding the police. So to say like whether Biden's stance on guns, I think it's a way to sort of parlay that into the gun issue as a whole. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say whether that's going to make inroads as far as improving crime.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of crimes will happen regardless of that, and I don't know.
I guess what I'm saying is we have to focus on tackling the issues of poverty if we really want to combat crime. Yeah. I think more so than tackling guns.
Because there are a lot of crimes that can still be committed with if you're holding a box cutter or a baseball bat. Things that are not going to be, ruled against. So I think that guns can certainly be a problem, but I don't know that it's necessary. I mean, look, there's this terrible video that was making the rounds of, there was a shootout in Brooklyn, and there were like 2 kids on the sidewalk who ducked down and ended up not getting shot. But, so I'm not saying that it is not a problem. I just don't know that it's going to fix some of the problems with just daily crime in some of these large cities. What do you think, Scott, about sort of both of these issues?
Well, I think, first of all, defunding the police, defunding was not the best term. And the majority of people didn't mean just completely defund them and wipe them out. What they meant is, like Tamara's point, is reallocating some of the resources, because the problem is, absolute money corrupts. It's like, the more money they have, and also the more militarization. The problem is too, is that we've given a lot of military equipment to these police departments that do not need military equipment to work with their local citizens. And so you get the militarization of the police. You're using the police as a catch-all for every little thing that you're doing. Like we said, there should be some stuff for mental health help. There should be increasing things for social services. There should be a lot of different levels of support that should go to other areas besides just using the police as a catch-all. So by defunding, it should have been a better phrase. But to Tamara's point, nobody at the national level or major senators or anything from the party has ever supported that, and that definition was misconstrued from the get-go, and it was not something that most people should have rallied behind, because the everyday person is not going to understand the fine details of what that actually meant and what that entailed. It's more of a reallocation of funds, and not giving it all, and not making the police the catch-all for every single everyday emergency. As far as guns, absolutely, they're a big component. A big part of doing, having these crimes is that we are a gun-happy culture, but we kind of missed that boat 50 years ago to cut off the manufacture of guns. And there should be no reason that we have militarized guns for everyday citizens. The Second Amendment was completely taken out of context from what it was meant to be. There shouldn't be unlimited availability to get as many guns and ammunition as you need. There's just no reason for that. And so, yes, guns do play a case in the everyday crime, because when you're having shootouts and everything, you're going to, like you said, even in Brooklyn, when you have a shootout, you're going to cause way more damage than someone trying to go in with a bat and go in and attack at a workplace, or go in and attack at a grocery store. I mean, they obviously have an influence, and an outsized influence, because you cannot do that type of carnage with other types of weapons. And so that is, but it's not the only issue. To Tamra's point, there is inequality. There are issues going on. I think there's also a lot of mental issues right now as well, of people kind of re-entering society, because you were sort of put under a false sort of imprisonment last year, where mentally you were separated from everyday society, and socially we're social beings, and to kind of restrict that to the level we did over the past 15 months to re-enter in society can also have a lot of mental issues, which again is why having something like Obamacare, having that safety net so people can not feel shame about getting mental health, because mental health is just as important as physical health. So you have a lot of issues coming into play, but clearly the guns are part of that bigger discussion. And AR-15s and military grade weapons should not be available to civilians out in the streets. There's just no reason behind it in any way, shape, or form, because that will exacerbate the crime that we're already dealing with. So this is just one of the issues they have to work with. But it goes back to immigration and everything else, and homelessness. There's not just one thing that leads to it. There's a bunch of different ingredients that go into when crime increases and crime decreases that are very difficult to get those nuances down. And you'd have to be a professional, to be able to work in that kind of capacity, even start to even comprehend how all these ingredients are coming together to increase crime. We saw obviously last year with protests and lockdowns, but now we're seeing the opposite as things open up again, and that's why we're seeing this increase in mass shootings, because now people are back out again. And so it's definitely a multi-pronged approach, but it's something that experts are going to have to look at a lot of different ways to be able to figure out the best way to move forward. But it is definitely an issue, and as we get into the summer, it is rather scary to think what other things that we're going to encounter this summer.
Yeah,
I'm personally, I'm looking forward to, I don't know if you guys have heard, but in Los Angeles, Hollywood and Venice are piloting a program called the Circle Team, where if you call 911, they are going to have, different response teams other than the police, depending on what the situation is. If they're like domestic disputes or nonviolent crimes or issues of mental health, they will be responded by social workers or other professionals who, may be better suited than police to respond to certain crimes. So it's in its early stages. It's going to be a pilot program. I also have my hesitations, even though I'm excited for this initiative to be taking place in Hollywood and in Venice. I also have my hesitations because so far I'm already seeing holes in the system. Like, for example, when I'm meeting with the council members team, I asked who this Circle Team is going to report to, and it's unclear who they're going to report to. So even in these early stages, I'm apprehensive that whether or not this is being organized properly. But it's exciting that these sort of changes are starting to be made.
Yeah, and who's going to be the one that gets those 911 calls that we've all heard, where somebody calls because Wendy's didn't put pickles on their hamburger? 911 gets those calls, and somebody has to be able to respond to them. And Tamra, I deputize you to handle those.
Happy to.
All right, great.
I'll handle it.
Last final thing, a couple more minutes before we wrap up, is Vice President Biden had the goal of 70% vaccination by July 4th. We're going to fall somewhat short of that. He said it'll take a few more weeks. And I think that's because, you have some states with like 80 or higher percent vaccination. But the First Lady, Jill Biden, was in Tennessee, and she was speaking to a crowd, pointing out that only 3 of 10 Tennesseans were vaccinated, and the crowd booed. So they booed themselves, as she pointed out. You've got Dr. Fauci, someone who has been vilified of late by a certain sect of the population, that saying like, this Delta variant out of India is something that's really making some problems in the rest of the world. It would help getting that vaccination that we're giving away in like McDonald's parking lots, and it's places like Sacramento, they're doing that. So we're all vaccinated. We're team vax. But Tamra, do you think that people who at this point, with the ease in which you can get it, of course you're going to have some people who are finally getting around to it, but the majority of people who haven't at this point, I think they're probably just not going to, unless they have like an employer that makes them get it. And in some cases, people have quit their jobs. That we talked about that hospital in Houston where like 15 people quit rather than get vaccinated. So what do you think, Tamra? Do you think that we'll get to the 70%, or are we going to kind of level off in places like Tennessee where it's only 3 in 10?
Well, I do think that there is still some progress to be made with vaccinations in people who just have not had the access to them. I don't know if I think I mentioned not this past weekend, but the weekend before, I went in with an organization that went to a lot of the homeless encampments around Hollywood to vaccinate, and we were able to, in just a few hours, vaccinate 19 people. And I was skeptical ahead of time. I thought, a lot of unhoused people are so hesitant to, trust things like that. I really wasn't sure how many people we were able to vaccinate, but we did. There are still so many communities that just have not had the access or the ability to get vaccinated. So there is still some progress to be made that I do believe will still be made. As far as the people who just straight up, don't believe in it, don't trust it, yes, I don't think that they will be vaccinated. I don't agree with employers mandating it, I have to say. As this has become more and more of a talking point, and I've thought about it, as somebody who is pro-vaccine, I don't think that an employer should mandate it. And the reason is because of the fact that if you are already a person who doesn't trust the vaccine, you don't trust the science, you don't trust your government, and you don't trust the media, you already are at that level of thinking that the majority of society is working against you. And for your employer to now force this on you, it's not going to help you start to open up to the idea or realize maybe this isn't as bad as I thought it was. It's only going to make you resist even more. So even though I think that these people do need to be vaccinated, I don't think that that's the way to go about doing it. I wish that maybe before putting a mandate, maybe employers would hire, like a team that has some sort of experience in like vaccine education or something like that as an attempt before they mandate it. But I think mandates are only going to make these people resist even more.
Yeah. And Scott, I'll get your thoughts in a second. With an important point from the chat, our friend Jason Blair, is the Delta variant like the Delta Quadrant from Star Trek Voyager, i.e., will we be assimilated? Yes, it has been proven that the Moderna vaccine will turn us all into Borg, but we should get it anyway because it just makes us our best self. But Jason, I appreciate you bringing the important issues to the forefront. Scott, as we wind down here, your final thoughts sort of on our vaccination goal, and if we don't meet it, what sort of problems do you think there will be for people who are not getting it? I mean, are they going to get sick in record numbers? And it's not like people who've been vaccinated aren't getting sick at all, but they're just less likely and unlikely to actually pass away from it.
Right. I think that the goal will fall short. What Biden has done up to this point has basically done what you would want to do in a PR sense of basically stating a lower goal and then surpassing that goal versus the other way around. And he has done that. And when they were looking at the earlier numbers, it looked like it was going to be closer to 70%, and they wanted to get people over the top for that. And it looks like it will fall just short, but within the range, you could joke it's within the margin of error, like you always hear about polls, probably 3 to 4%, maybe we'll be closer to 66, 67%, which overall is good. But yeah, it's not exactly where we want to be because, again, the more people that are vaccinated, the closer we get to that herd immunity. But obviously, the ones that are not getting vaccinated are being helped by those that are, because they'll be less likely to have these variants spread around, because there'll be less people that it will pass to. But it is important for everybody, and hopefully more people will join. However, on the employer part of it, it's very squishy, but technically, legally, employers can ask. And if someone is that hesitant to get their vaccine, it's the same thing if you're a kid and you're going to send your children to school, they have to be vaccinated. If that person doesn't feel comfortable, then they should maybe find a new job that's remote 100%, or they will have to find something else. There is a point to where to reopen back into normalcy and be working closely with your colleagues day in and day out does provide a risk. Then that person may have to find a new job. I do know, a lot of companies aren't outright asking for vaccination cards, but however, if you have a job that entails you to travel, those companies may say, okay, this job, you can't travel anymore on our company dime, because for our own liability of sending you out, and our own insurance could be too great of a risk for us, because you could fall ill, and now it's on the company because we've sent you out to travel. So I do believe that companies legally do, well, I mean, they do have the right to do that, but I think companies should, if they feel it's in the best interest of their employees, and for their own, let's be honest too, it's going to be about their bottom line at the end of the day. And if their bottom line is going to be, we don't have to do payouts for insurance and workers' comp and other issues that could arise from this, then they should. And if those people are so entrenched of not wanting to do that, again, hey, that's capitalism, free market. Go find yourself another job where you can be 100% remote, or whatever other company that may hew to your ideology, and find another job. We're at record jobs of people quitting now, so join that club and find something else if you don't want to be vaccinated, because again, you have a right not to be vaccinated, but you don't have a right to just sit and work somewhere
right
because of that either.
Yeah, Jason makes the point, working closely with colleagues is the best argument not to get vaccinated. Yeah, to not have to go back into the workplace and work with the same people and a half ago. Can't argue with that. I agree in principle with what Tamra said. The idea of making healthcare workers at that hospital get vaccinated, I kind of see the value in that. But in general, I do agree with that. In any case, that is all of our time for this week, and also for next week. Letting everyone know that we will not be with you next week. We're all busy at the same time, and we think that you could also take a break from us, is what it really everybody will enjoy not seeing us for 1 week, but we'll be back on July the 6th. Until then, Tamra, where can people see you exercising your freedom of speech to say fuck cheer?
I am pro cheer. Anybody that follows me knows that. Follow me at Hey Tamra.
And Scott, when you want to have the freedom of speech to share your thoughts about Minority Leader Mitch McConnell,
right here, SMan80.
80. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And please subscribe to the Blackcast YouTube channel, where in less than 2 hours we will be discussing episode 3 of Loki on Marvel Movie Talk. So you have time to watch it. You don't have time to watch all 3. So just watch 2 and 3 if you need to get caught up, and then join us at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. That is all the time we have. Thanks to everybody in the chat and everyone. As always, we will see you on July 6th. So until then, happy birthday, America. We'll see you then. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.